So, welcome back to chapter 5 of our topic human resources planning. Human resources planning and the objectives, the learning objectives are what you've seen or what you're seeing on the screen. The purpose of this chapter is to identify how an organization and its managers can forecast the quality and quantity of employee needed in an organization. So, basically, if you remember last week in our class, we talked about HR planning ahead for the goal of the company. That is the company is trying to expand and create three more factories. So in the class, we demonstrated how that can be possible and the expectation of the director of HR in forecasting and preparing for more, recruiting more staff, training more staff, budgeting more salaries, and all of that. So that is the process of HR planning, thinking ahead, forecasting, future needs of employees of an organization and ensure these numbers are prepared for, hired in the right quantity so that there won't be surplus or deficit, right? In some textbooks, they mention overstaffing and understaffing. It's still the same thing. So here in this chapter, we're going to be looking at our labor economics, the demand, supply, equilibrium points, and all of that. So the first step is when you are doing your HR planning, you need to analyze by forecasting the labor supply. How many staff do we have in house? How many staff can we use within the organization to fill the vacant positions? Then we look at the labor demands. How many numbers of employees do we need more? Where can we find them? Then it is it's very important for HR to plan and implement HR program to balance the demand and supply. That is where equilibrium point comes to play. So whatever you're planning must equate demand and supply. There must be equilibrium. It must not be too high, it must not be too low to avoid problem of surplus or deficit. So the model you're seeing here talks about the forecasting of labor forecast, labor supply, labor demand, and techniques we use, including tools and considerations. So at the end of the day, we want to identify the gap analysis and create a solution, which is still the equilibrium point we mentioned. Now, relationship between HR planning and strategy planning. You remember last week we talked about vertical and horizontal alignment. So, um, generally, it's called strategic alignment. So, when HR is planning, HR must plan to, you know, help the goal of the organization, the CEO's vision, the mission, the goals, and the objectives of the organization is to press forward, is to move forward, is to expand, is to maybe reduce staffing, or is to diversify. Whatever the goal of the organization is, HR must plan towards that to ensure it aligns with the strategic goals of the organization. Sample workforce planning is also very important, where HR understand the business plan, the business, strategic plan, and plan ahead, towards those things, including, for instance, if a company is expanding, we are having three more factories, just like I said last week in the classroom. The one of the key responsibilities of HR is to plan ahead, also to know the number of people they need in each of those factories and look inwardly. How many people can we transfer? Can we promote? Can we hire to new locations before looking outward? And that is external. So the demand and supply of labor must balance. Okay, so HR must develop that workforce strategy to align with the general strategy of the organization. And also, you must prioritize hiring, planning, training, and other areas, that the gap may be coming from, including metrics to measure so that we don't have surplus or deficit. Another thing is, that is very key or crucial is environmental scanning. Last week, we also did this the pairs to internal and external factors that affect organization. So, if you want to start planning your number of people you need, especially when you want to hire, you need to understand that there are factors that are beyond your control, especially external factors, the pairs to political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors. These are factors that affect, you know, organizations and we don't have control over them. So it is important for HR to note, identify these factors and prepare ahead for them. So some of the external environmental factors include economic condition, inflation, unemployment rates. All of these are part of economic factors. The competitive market trends, the new law, which is under legal, all right, law on immigration, law on minimum wage, all of this. You can't hire people below the minimum wage. For example, I'm talking from Ontario, and our minimum wage is 1720 as of today. So no employer is expected to hire below 1720. That is the law. So HR must be conversant with every employment laws within their jurisdictions and the social consent, healthcare, educational, healthcare, demography, technology, the world of AI, all of these things. They are also um, to HR planning. Now let's talk about forecasting human resources needs supply. So, like I said earlier, supply means how many number of employees do we have ready in the house, and where can we, how can we maximize that number of staff to fill those vacant positions before looking outwardly. So, it's very important to forecast our labor supply, and there are many ways we can identify number of people that we already have. So some of the tools that we use, we're going to talk about them. So two forecasts are needed: the supply and demand of forecast. So it's ideal to know number of people we need and how can we get them. Is it internal? Can we get them internally from the existing um, employees that we have, or we have to go outside, look outwardly to advertise and get more people to join our organization? Now, for the tools forecasting of the supply of internal candidates, we can use skill inventory. So, skill inventory is a manual, a record that talks about all the staff that we have, their experiences in education, interest. So, in a row that you'll be able to see all your talent, all your staff, their skills, their competencies, their experiences. And we also have management inventory, which is also similar to skill inventory. Now, the difference between the two is that management inventory is more of the focus of managers, managerial positions, rather than every every other person in under skill inventory. So in skill inventory combines all the line styles, supervisor level. The management inventory focuses on managers and upward. Then we have replacement charts that talks about all the vacancies. It's a visual representation of all um, the vacant positions within the organization when they need to be replaced. All right, especially when somebody is retiring or resigning, all of those positions that to be put under replacement chart so that HR can know which positions are vacant, which positions are ongoing with interviews, which one have been filled. The replacement summary, it's just this general summary of the replacement chart, number of vacant positions, number of ongoing interviews, number of position filled, number of offer rejected, and all that. Now, succession planning is another way of forecasting supply of labor. So it's a strategic way of positioning an understudy under a manager or crucial positions where they understudy the person until the manager is promoted or leaves the organization. So by the time they're leaving or promoted, they there's another ready made or couple of people around them who have been understudying them and they're ready to move into that role or position. So we use this to develop human capital, your human people and human resources, so that there won't be any need at any point to have a replacement challenge. So whenever whenever a replacement calls, we already have somebody who is their successor who is ready to move into that role. Now, forecasting the supply of internal candidates. These are some of the steps, especially using succession planning to ensure supply of successor for key jobs or key roles so that there will be efficient planning, efficient transitioning. So some of the things we need to do or criteria include analysis of job for managers and professionals, audits, and projection of likely future supply of labor, planning individual career path so that everybody knows this is my career path I'm going through. Okay, I'll be an accountant, I'll be a vice president of finance, so you know your path. Then they also create career planning. It can come in from a coaching, mentoring, and counseling, accelerated promotions, and also plan strategic recruitments. Now we also have another tool called Markov analysis. So it's a way of forecasting labor supply and movement of people within the organization. It tracks the pattern of people, number of people that have been promoted, transferred, their location, what they were doing before, what they are doing now, and it shows in the probability matrix the number of employees and how they move around their location within the organization. Okay, so let's talk about forecasting supply of external candidates. So we're done with internal. So when you're forecasting number of external candidates, so you're talking about advertising, knowing number of employee applicants and candidates that you need to apply, you need to employ from outside. And when you're doing this, you need to pay attention to environmental scanning. So that brings us back to where we started, PES 2. You need to look at the environment, the economy, the labor market, the unemployment rate, the salary or wage, minimum wage law. You need to look at pest tool, everything about pest tool that we mentioned. All of this will going to guide you in your hiring phases, in your recruitment phases as well. So, forecasting human resources needs, managers should consider several factors when forecasting the number and type of people needed. One, projected turnover due to resignation and termination. So when you're hiring, you also need to put into perspective people that will still resign, people that will be terminated should also be considered into the percentage. Now, what are the qualities and nature of current employees that we have in relation to changing needs of the business or business trends? Are they compliant? Are they up to date with knowledge? Do they have digital skills? Can they operate AI and all of that? So you need to look at the quality of employees that we have presently within your organization. Then changes in products and services of new markets, which requires new employee skill mix. So as things are changing, trends. We need to also look at the marketplace, look at the current employees that we have. Does the skill, do they really have the skill to match the the recent business trends and demands, technological and administrative changes, which we've also mentioned before in terms of digitalization and AI, availability of financial resources. We must have the budget and approval to be able to hire the right candidates. So one thing is to plan, another thing is to get approval from the management team for hiring. So forecasting of human resources needs as demand. There are two different approaches to this forecasting. We have qualitative approach, which has no calculations. Then we have quantitative approach that has calculations. So we're just going to talk. Actually, we're not going to talk about the calculations. We're just going to talk about them in a jiffy. So let's start with the quantitative approaches to forecasting human resources demand. So the first one is trend analysis. So we use the past trends to forecast the future. So let's say I have a progression right now: 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. What's going to be the next one? 35. Because when you look at the trend, 5, 5, 5, 5. So possibly the next step after where I stop is also going to be 5. So that was why I said 35. That's a simple trend analysis. So for ratio analysis, we're using business activities, the ratio of sales, for instance, to the number of employees we're going to higher. If the ratio of sales is high, then we need more people to join the force. If the ratio of sales is dropping, then that's also drop. Then we have scatter diagram is also, a kind of graph that shows the relationship between, um, maybe uh, department and their staffing level. So you'll be able to see the concentration of where you have more staff and where you have lower staff. Then it's also useful to be able to, okay, we have so much concentration of staff in this area, you can transfer some to where they needed, um, they need staff. Then we have regression analysis that talk. It's a statistical tool that showcases the relationship between business activities and employees. So if the business, let's say business is going up, the sales is going up, the graph of employee hiring should also be going up. If the sales is dropping, then number of employees should also be dropping. So it's just a relationship between two factors. So let's talk about qualitative approaches to human forecasting human resources needs. So the first one here under qualitative. Remember, I said qualitative is a non-calculation approach. Okay, non-statistical approach. So the first one is nominal group. All right, nominal group technique is the kind of technique where we have the gathering of subject matter experts. Okay, it can be in a meeting, somebody is facilitating, and all the managers are talking based on experience. We need more, we need this, we need that, and they deliberate on it. They make decisions based on managerial experience and judgments. Okay, so it's easier, it's faster, and it's simple. The only thing about it is that if you don't get the buy-in, you might not get your point approved. It's subjective and it can also be affected by group pressure, okay? Group influence and group pressure. So the second type of qualitative approach is DeFi technique. So in DeFi techniques, we have judgmental forecasting methods, which arrive from group decisions. Basically, we have subject matter experts that are bringing in questionnaires and surveys. So this comes in different phases. The first phase, the person in charge look at the and screen out and streamline the answers and give them again, get feedback. It can go like 3 or 4, 5 times until the facilitator gets, arrive at an answer. But this time around, the subject matter experts are not seeing themselves. They are only dealing with surveys and questionnaires. They bring in some questions, send in questionnaires, and the moderator streamline answers until he or she is satisfied with maybe one or two, arrive at satisfactory answers. Okay, let's talk about staffing table, which is a pictorial representation of all positions within the organization, current positions, field on field, the one that are also open for the future, hiring. We use that in HR to estimate our long-term and short-term HR requirements in terms of people or talent. Now, if we have HR planning, two things are about to happen. So HR planning, just like I said, You need to plan so that your surplus will not be more than your demand. Your supply will not be more than demand. So there must be equilibrium where demand and supply meet. So if there is surplus, that means internal supply is more than what we needed. If there are shortages, that means demand is lower. So, and there will be more pressure on, shortage of people. The people that internally will work more, they will work more. There's going to be pressure on them. So you don't want to hire too many people, and that will lead to cost. Incurring more costs in terms of paying salaries and benefits. Same thing for understaffing or shortages. So now let's talk about how do we correct these anomalies. The first one is when you have labor shortage. No, the first thing is to hire to freeze, recruitment, hiring freeze. Stop hiring people. You can also encourage people to go on early retirement and give them money, for early retirement. You can also do job sharing. Job sharing is when you have one job, you share it between two persons or more. Okay. Instead of losing their jobs completely, you can, have bread is better than one. Share one job with two or more persons. Then we have work sharing. You have to be very careful. Work sharing is different from job sharing. Work sharing is when you reduce the number of days in different departments that they work. Okay, somebody is working 4 days a week or 5 days a week. You change it or reduce it to 3 days a week. In another department, you reduce them to maybe 4 days a week. So when you reduce the number of days a week, it's called work sharing. Then we also have another one that is called reduced work week, where people work fewer hours, only hours. So maybe you're working 40 hours before, you can change it to 35, you can change it to 30. That is reduced work week. So we need to pay attention to these three: job sharing, work sharing. You might also find it in your exam. It's kind of tricky, but it's not the same. Okay. So uh still on labor supports, you can lay off people, okay, permanent layoff, temporary layoff, you can terminate, employment. Though this one is very tricky, but it's still possible under the employment at will, you know, principles. Then you can also ask them to go on leave without pay for a long time until the business bounces back. Now, when you are terminating people's employment or laying people off, especially in a mass layoff, one thing that you need to also pay attention to is that the people that are remaining within the organization can be affected by survival syndrome. So it's a negative emotional state where employees feel sad. They feel um, guilt that maybe some of their friends have been fired and they're still working with the company. They feel guilt, betrayal. They feel that no, who is next? If you're firing some people, we are here in the organization, maybe we are next and all of that. So HR must work on this survival syndrome, encourage them that okay, we are no longer firing, the rest of you are okay. The people that we asked to go, they were they were hugely compensated. We still have employment insurance to get them back up. And there's also what we call supplemental unemployment benefits, which can also be given to employees, including severance package according to the law. So you have to encourage them that yes, these have been given to them, that they're in good hands, that the rest of them are safe and they should concentrate on their job. You need to continuously encourage them so that production doesn't go down or go south. Okay, so labor surplus management issue. I think I mentioned supplemental employment, unemployment benefits, which is the top up of EI, which can be given to people that are laid off or people that lose their job involuntarily. Um, we also have severance package. It's also compulsory under the law. It's mandatory that anybody whose job is severe can get severance package. And the last part is for shortages. If you have labor shortages, that is hiring below what you needed, We can correct that entirely through transfers. Concentrate on where you have more people and transfer them to where there are less employees, where more hands are needed. You can promote people to that, department as well. Okay, transfer people. You can also use employees retention strategies so that people don't leave, or they are not discouraged to leave the organization. You can also use external solutions, just like such as hiring more people, more employees. You can use temporary employees. You can also outsource, your hiring needs so that uh, outsourcing agencies can also help you meet up with your demands so that there won't be shortages. So, in a nutshell, HR must plan. HR planning must be very strategic and aligned with the goals of the organization. Um, HR must forecast the demand and supply of labor and make sure there is no surplus, there is no shortage. No shortages, no surplus. Everything has to be balanced, which is the equilibrium point. So, thank you very much for listening. We have come to the end of this presentation. Now, this week, we're going to have a test. Please, all other information, check on your Moodle. I'm going to also write you and put everything on the announcement. So please make sure you read and follow the instructions, especially for this week activity, which is a test. So I wish you all the best. I'll see you next week and have a great one. Bye bye.